What is going on, everybody? It is Friday, March the 11th, and that means it's time for my News Radar. And before we jump into the first news story of the day, I want to let you guys know about some changes that are going to be coming to the channel. So as you probably know, I release a News Radar video every Monday and every Friday. And then, of course, the other days of the week besides Sunday, I will release other topical videos that maybe need a little bit longer time to breathe. For a little while, I don't know if this is going to be a permanent thing or not, but basically, I just don't have time right now to do 2 News Radar videos per week. Basically, the reasoning for this is I'm going to do 4 other videos during the course of the week and then 2 videos in addition to that, which both contain 3 or more topics. So basically, by reducing a News Radar video to a regular video, that is 2 topics that I don't have to think about and cover and talk about. Just some stuff going on. Nothing super duper horrible, awful, but I just don't have the time I would like to have to do those 2 additional topics every week. So you're still going to get the same amount of videos, but one of the News Radar videos is just going to probably turn into another normal video. Okay, so now that that is out of the way, housekeeping put aside, let's talk about the news, and there's quite a bit of it to cover in today's video. So thing number 1 is an update on Windows 11 being ported to the original Surface Duo. There's a developer on Twitter, Gustav at GUS33000, Gus33000, and he has been posting on his Twitter account many updates in the photo and video format about things that he's accomplished with Windows 11 on a Surface Duo. So here's a tweet he posted just a little while ago showing that he has gotten the device functioning properly so that whenever you close the thing, it goes to sleep, and whenever you open it, it does in fact wake up. And he's posted a lot of other stuff too. Let's do a quick recap. As you can see here, CPU cores are boosting properly, so things running relatively quickly. You can see here a video of the Duo actually managing to boot. You see the login screen there. So lots of good progress has been made, but now the big piece of news for this is that if you are a brave enough individual, you too can take part in this experience because he is now made available an early preview of this exact work. You can actually go download this and do it yourself. I'm going to tell you this right now. If you're in the comments asking me how to do this, you shouldn't do it. This is way more complicated than the stuff I usually show on this channel. I've looked at the instructions and they are posted here. This tweet will be in the description. And there is a guide here that you can follow, okay? And everything here is what you need. You just have to follow these instructions, but this is relatively complicated stuff. So again, if you're in the comments asking, Shane, how do I do this? It's probably not for you yet. This experience might get easier as time goes on, and you also have to keep in mind that this is really not ready for prime time at all. This is a very early preview. As you see here, what works and what matters from an end user point of view, the side buttons work, USB works after a registry change, closing to open the device works, CPU frequency is working, but that's pretty much it. Nothing else is working. So this is more broken than it is functional. But again, if you want to take part in this, if you want to see Windows 11 on your Surface Duo, you can go download this now, and you might be braver than I am. As you probably know, the default text messaging app for a lot of Android devices, and in particular Android devices that are important to this channel, like Microsoft's Surface Duo, is in fact Google Messages. It's my preferred messaging app because, for one, it uses RCS, rich communication services, which is very, very good. It kind of gives you that Apple iMessage-like thing where things are sent. You can see that it's red, images sent are higher quality, so forth and so on. Well, now we have from Google some news about some big features coming to Google Messages. And some of these are really cool, and some of these are things they've been testing here for a little bit. And we're going to let this little video here play because it shows a lot of it. So in this message here, you can see they're going to attach a video to a text message. And you can see here, you can just send it in standard video quality. And of course, if this is an SMS, it's going to look like garbage. If it is being sent to another user who happens to be using Google Messages or something compatible with RCS, the video is going to look pretty good. But if you want it to look even better, you can hit send Google Photos link, which is what they do here. It will then pop up that it's going to upload to Google Photos, generate a link, and then send it to them. So if they click on it, it's going to open it up inside their Google Photos app, or if they don't have that, maybe a web browser opens up, whatever. But they see that video in a much higher quality, and it's not being sent directly to them, simply uploaded to the Google Photo server, and then they can view that link. I think that's a really cool option to have. Now you see a reaction down here. This is something we've had on Google Messages for a while. You can long press and react to a text message. But this one here is actually translated from the iPhone, because iMessage has had this for a really long time. But if you are like me and you use an Android device and you talk to someone that has an iPhone and they react to your message, rather than getting that little emoji, you get a full text message that says such and such laughed at, and then a quote, the whole message again sent back to you. It's really ugly and horrible and stupid. Google Messages is going to actually start intercepting that and then translating it on the fly to look way, way better than it did before. What about the fact that now we receive all sorts of text messages from things that aren't people, like businesses? Well, here is a categorization feature that should be done automatically in the background to separate these things and to hide them away so you can sort through them much more easily. This looks quite good to me as well. And then here is a reminder, which I've actually seen popping up on my device already, to say, hey, you didn't respond to this, and to draw your attention to it. If you're someone like me that might have a little touch of ADHD and you see that text and maybe you even thought you responded to it, well, now Google Messages is going to remind you, hey, dude, you didn't actually ever respond to that person. Maybe you should. How about some reminders here? Let's go back again because I jumped really quickly. Send birthday wishes to Natalie. So it's going to be looking at their contacts, seeing when their birthday might be based on their information, reminding you to send that message. Facebook has served that purpose for a lot of people, but for some of us that don't have a Facebook account, maybe Google Messages can slide right in there and help us be less of a social pariah by reminding us to send those messages, and also when people's birthdays are. I honestly like a lot of this stuff. This seems like some really cool, interesting features that kind of brings Google Messages more in line with some of the stuff that Google has tried in the past with their 237 different messaging apps that they've tried. And I've used a lot of them. I've used Hangouts. I used Allo for a long time. These things had a lot of cool features. And it seems like a lot of them are now slowly kind of being evolved and rethought and then brought back into Google Messages proper. Good stuff. All right, let's do something now that I pretty much never do on this channel. Let's talk about Apple, because they just had a really big event where they announced 237 different things, and some of them are preposterously boring, and some of them are interesting, and some of them I might have a slightly different take on than what you may have heard in the past. So let's start off here with the first thing being first. And you're going to see this is actually in a OneNote note that I just kind of pieced together because there's a lot here and this was the best way I could think to do it. So the first thing that they showed off is look, I'm just going to say it, ugly green color iPhone 13s. This is something that Apple does, and it's actually really intelligent. What they do is after the iPhone 13 comes out, they're going to wait until you're about halfway to the iPhone 14, and then they're going to release new colors to kind of like reinvigorate interest in the devices. I don't think these are the colors to do it. I don't know, maybe there's somebody out there that wants to keep their phone. They've got one of those like arm things that they hold their phone in, and they're like a hunter, so they're wearing camo, and this would blend in really well for them. Maybe that's what they're going for. I don't know. I don't love these colors, but here you go. New iPhone 13 colors, March 18th. Then we have the iPhone SE. This is one that's been quite controversial. I've got a lot of people on my Twitter timeline really taking a dump on this thing. And let's be honest, I totally understand why. Let's take a look at it. It looks just like the last iPhone SE and the one before. It looks, I think the iPhone 8 is basically this design. They've just reused it over and over. It has a 4.7-inch display, which I believe is only 720p, 12 megapixel camera, a single 12 megapixel camera. It does have the current A15 Bionic chips. It's the same one as in the iPhone 13, so the internals are quite powerful. It's only going to run $429. It'll be shipping on March the 18th. A lot of people look at this and they say, it's the same design, it's ugly, it's old. Why would anybody buy this? It's gone up in price from last year from $399 to $429. You know, who is this for? What is the point of this device? You know, you could say it's a budget device, but there are way, way cheaper budget devices than this, right? I'm hoping to be able to review a couple of budget phones in the near future, should they ever actually be shipped to me as they were supposed to have been. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But devices that are closer to like $200, which will probably be just as good as this phone, except they will be running Android. And that, I think, is the absolutely massive distinction that must be made here. Let me tell you a little story. My mom, I think, uses an iPhone 8. I believe that's what she has. It's something like that. This phone is quite old. She's had this thing for a long time. And I think it was a refurbished device. I think it was old when she got it. It's super duper old, okay? The battery is absolute garbage on it now. I literally watched her the other day. We walked around the lake there at their house, and I think she lost like 40% battery in like a 20-minute span, okay? This thing is on absolute death's door. But that's, you know, she's an iPhone user, and that's what she's used to. She will never own an Android phone. That's just, it will be too big of a change for her. It would be horrible for her to switch. So if she's going to go look to buy a brand new phone, I can tell you one thing. She's not going to buy the iPhone 13. It's way too expensive. She doesn't need these cameras. She doesn't need this. She could buy this. And it would be more in the budget that she's willing to spend. And it would keep her in the iPhone ecosystem. It would look just like what she's used to effectively already. The change would be very, very minimal. So that's who this is for. You know, when people talk about, oh, well, there's cheaper Android phones that are better. Yeah, but it's not an iPhone. And people really have to understand the power of an ecosystem. My mom uses an iPhone. My sister uses I think both my sisters use iPhones. In fact, they use iMessage all the time with, you know, relatives we have in Florida, down south. They all use iMessage and they call each other and they talk that way. And that's what they're used to. So if mom was like, oh, my iPhone is dying, I'm going to go buy this $300 Android device that's got, you know, probably more cameras and probably a much bigger battery, a higher resolution screen, smaller bezels, all these things like that. She'd lose iMessage. She would lose all these iPhone features that she'd lose all of her muscle memory. So she's not going to do that. So this is a budget device, okay? It's not a budget Android device. It's a budget iPhone device. And that is going to sell. They will sell millions of these. And I think that's like plainly obvious if you're paying attention. I see a lot of people hating on this thing. Who would buy this? It's not very good, all these things. You got to understand who they're targeting with this. And for those people, it's going to be very, very effective. Let's move on to the iPad Air, because my understanding is that this is, again, a recycled design. It's the same physical design of the last iPad Air, except now it is running the Apple M1 chip. It was in the iPad Pro, I believe, from last time. So this thing is going to be much, much faster. This M1 chip is so incredibly impressive. And now it is in an iPad Air at a cheaper price, and that is quite cool. It does have that new ultra-wide selfie camera with center stage that'll track you when you're moving around, you know, so that's cool. People love that. It's got a two times faster USB-C port, which is cool. I don't know why the new iPhones still have a USB-C port, but whatever, the iPads do, so that's cool. Still no Final Cut Pro, and that's something that I put in here because I think it's really relevant. We're reaching a point now where the iPads for $599 have similar internals to their full computers, to their MacBooks, to their Mac whatever's, minis. But they're still running iPadOS, and they're still heavily restricted by that software. So the hardware is there, the software, they got to open this stuff up, right? They got to just find a way to just let people use their iPad like a computer because it's more than capable of doing it. This is similar to the analogy I gave you. They're talking about Samsung's throttling issue. This is a speed limit. This iPad is capable of going 200 miles an hour, but you're only putting it on a road that stops at 65, and that's kind of a waste. Shipping March 11th. Let's look at the M1 Ultra because Apple continues to just absolutely gap everybody around them, and I got a lot written down here. So we've gone from the M1 to the M1 Pro, M1 Max, and now M1 Ultra. I believe that's right. Yeah, M1 Pro Max, and you can see here the size, the actual physical size of this thing is getting bigger. We're talking about that in a second. It's basically two M1 Max chips stuck together using a tech they're calling Ultra Fusion. You can see here, M1 Max, they've just glued them together, okay? So you essentially just have doubled up from the M1 Max. So that doesn't mean you double your performance because that's not how things work. But still absolutely insane that that's what they're doing here. It has a 20-core CPU with 16 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. A 64-core GPU, which is as fast as one of the most popular discrete GPUs while using 1/3 of the energy. So what that means is it uses less power than a 3060 Ti. It can deliver 3090 level performance at 200 watts less power. Now, an important distinction here is also software because you're not going to be playing modern high-end games on your MacBook because they're not designed to run on Mac. So the power's there, but the software isn't. You're not going to be gaming on this thing, but that's not what it's for. And look, you could game on it. Okay, I get it. There are some games on Mac, but you know what I'm saying? Windows versus Mac. Clearly one of them is for gaming. One of them isn't. As far as the CPU goes, it uses less power than an i5 12600K. It is more performant than an i9 12600K, and it can deliver the same performance as an i9 using 100 watts less power. The efficiency on this thing is absolutely mind-boggling, staggering, unbelievable. No one is even close to competing with what they're doing right now. I'm not an Apple person, but what they're doing is ridiculous. And I know we've talked about, you know, a third gen version of the HCX, basically a Surface Pro X2. Well, the Surface Pro X2 is going to get gapped by the original M1. So the Ultra, we're not even speaking the same language at that point, okay? 32-core neural engine, 125 gigs of unified RAM maximum. This is for people making movies, okay? Like, this is insanity. Supports up to 5 monitors, 18 streams simultaneous of 4K video. And that's probably not even what's going to come in the Mac Pro, which will be released later on and announced later on. There's probably something even more powerful than this for the actual Mac Pro. Absolutely redonkulous. So here's a Geekbench score, which does not, you know, not the end all be all, but we can at least look at it here. This is the Geekbench score. And if we scroll over here, you'll see a Geekbench score for basically a Windows device running a 3rd gen HCX, basically something similar to what a Surface Pro X2 might be running. And you can read numbers. They're a lot bigger over here. They're like way, like 5 times bigger, okay? They're like colossally bigger in some ways, okay? So the performance is mind-boggling. They also announced the Mac Studio. So Mac Studio looks like this. It looks like a Mac Mini, but chunkier. And this thing is running this new M1 Ultra. You can also get it with the M1 Max. You can see here, you got some USB or Thunderbolt ports up front should you choose to go the way. A SD card up front, cool, good on you. More Thunderbolt ports, Ethernet, USB-A, HDMI. This thing's got pretty solid I/O, and it is extremely fast. You can get it with the M1 Ultra for $4,000, but again, pretty performant. M1 Max for $2,000, ships March 18th. And again, like I said, Mac Pro to come will be even more powerful and even more expensive. There's a lot of information here on the screen should you want to be reading this stuff. It's very, very impressive what they're doing, okay? And it's not something that someone like me is going to buy because I want to have Windows. However, if you are someone editing a ton of video, this thing is itty bitty. It's going to sit on top of your table. It's going to take up no space, and it's going to absolutely chew through 4K video editing in a way that nothing else on the market really is going to. This thing's going to be able to outperform the current Mac Pro, and it's like this big. And then, of course, we do now have the new Studio display. It is articulatable. It is a 5K display, so it's not like their other more Pro display, which is really expensive, so it's like a half step between them. But it looks really good. It has an A13 chip inside of it, so the chip that was in the iPhone from a couple years back is in this display simply to be running the camera, which is just a little overkill, but I get it. It's got that center stage as well, so a really good webcam. 6 speakers, and Apple speakers are always very good, so I'm sure it's quite good. An inbuilt mic, 3 USB-C, and a Thunderbolt port all on this thing to be able to interface with that. You can actually charge some devices from it. Shipping March 18th for $15.99. There's a lot of information there. Apple continues to do Apple things. These M1 chips are just unbelievable, and I'm a big Windows person. I don't want to ever own, I don't care about Mac and Mac OS and iOS and iPhones. I just don't care. But I got to tell you, it makes me jealous to think about what they're doing with these M1 chips. These Ultra chips are unbelievable. And should the software ever be able to do the things I want to do, it might be tempting. Guys, thanks for making it to the end of today's video. I'll see you with a plethora of more videos over the next few coming days. Stay tuned for all that. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.